Thank you so much for having me. This is about the first official White House menorah. And it was made from a piece of reclaimed wood that was salvaged during a Truman era renovation of the White House. And there are many cool things about this particular menorah. The fact that it was made from a piece of scrap wood. And this wood was destined for junk. And yet it became a beam of light. The first official White House menorah. It can never be removed because it's the first piece of Judaica in the official White House collection. When I heard that there had never been an official White House menorah, the journalist in me was like, what? I thought that I had seen different menorah lightings in various administrations, and that's actually true, but they were always menorahs that had been on loan. So they were never part of the permanent official White House collection. So the other cool thing about this menorah is that it is actually the first piece of Judaica, the first Jewish artifact in the official White House collection, so it can't ever be taken away. I saw a news story in 2022 about this menorah, and I saw the menorah lighting at the White House. And when I heard about the fact that it was actually that this menorah started as a piece of reclaimed wood, the author in me started coming up with this story. Okay, here's a darkness to light theme. Something that started as a piece of scrap wood somehow became this symbol of light. So I knew that I wanted to write a children's book about it. As I researched further, the pieces really began to fall into place. Here's the first official piece of permanent Judaica in the White House, and it was supposed to be destroyed. And so the parallels to the Jewish people became so apparent to me, and I was really moved by this story. The narration, it took care of itself. Some books are a bit more of a struggle to come up with a narrative arc, but this one really, I felt like it came through me. So I have this refrain in the book: I was supposed to be destroyed. And that to me says everything, because it's so much about the resilience and the strength and the determination of the Jewish people to survive against insurmountable odds, just like this piece of wood did. And it became a symbol of light. No, it didn't write itself. I mean, it was hard work, but it was such joyful work for me because I kept uncovering these pieces that felt intrinsically, for me, they felt perfect for the book. For example, including the bit about the 1943 Rabbis' March on Washington and how these 400 rabbis marched up the White House steps to President Roosevelt, begging him to save the Jewish people in Europe who were being slaughtered, and he refused. It's such a little known yet important piece of history that shows the absolutely devastating consequences of turning your back on people who are asking for help. And clearly that is more relevant today than ever. Obviously, I had no idea what the state of the world would be right now when I wrote this book, but I do feel extra proud as a Jewish author. I definitely feel a greater sense of responsibility now to tell these stories of resilience and resistance, and also hope, which we absolutely need so much more than ever now. I hope that young readers, their caregivers, older readers, I hope that people are inspired by this piece of wood that was supposed to be destroyed. You know, we all have our challenges, our struggles. We all have those moments where we feel like this is the end. And yet it turns out to be a beginning or a rebirth. And So I really hope that kids of any religion, readers of any age, can internalize this story of this piece of wood that was supposed to be destroyed and yet turned out to be this enduring symbol of strength and endurance and resilience. Because at the beginning, we don't know what happens. We have an idea because of the cover. You see a brilliant, the brilliant lights of the menorah. But my hope is that it takes readers on a journey from this piece of wood that doesn't know its fate and that goes through trials and tribulations and sits in a warehouse through 13 presidents. And at the end, we see in 2022, President Biden lighting this menorah, talking about it as a symbol of permanence. And so I hope that everyone reading this can derive inspiration and hope and can see themselves as a potential source of light, just like this beam. From the beginning, I really felt like this beam was a survivor. It's the energy of this piece of wood came through to me so loud and clear as a survivor against all odds. It's shining. It's in the White House. It's a symbol of survival. And so I hope the energy of that book spills out of the pages to the reader. And so they're not just taking in a story of the first White House menorah, they're actually taking in a source of light. And hopefully they are feeling it within themselves. I hope they never give up. I hope that they see their dark times as temporary. I hope that they see their potential. I hope that they remind others of their potential. I hope that they feel their connection to something greater than themselves. I do hope ultimately that they can be the light and that they know that about themselves, that they can harness that light within. It's so different for every book. So my first book, The Voice That Won the Vote, How One Woman's Words Made History. It's about basically the mom who helped save suffrage. And my agent and I were talking. We knew that the 100th anniversary of the suffrage centennial was coming up. And so I was looking for a topic, and I go into schools and I tell kids this, and it's funny because it's, you know, I literally did a Google search, little known women in the suffrage movement. And that's how I found her. If there's a topic that you're interested in, this is what I tell students. If there's something you're curious about, something that you're passionate about, do an internet search for little known people. You might find a great book idea. That's actually how I found another book idea for Splash, A Thelda Tree Makes Waves of Change. I'm a former swimmer, diver, and I knew I wanted to write a story about another rebel, and same thing. I actually did little known women Olympians, Olympic swimmers. And Thelda Tree, she was the first woman to win an Olympic gold medal in swimming, but she also was such a barrier breaker. She changed the law that women had to swim with thick black socks, and she just went breaking rules everywhere. And I love rebels. I love people who are defiant. And so anyway, there are all kinds of ways. It's always a big emotion that moves me. With my first book, The Voice That Won the Vote, I was moved by certain scenes that I knew I wanted to include. So I had read that Feb Byrne, the mom in Tennessee, she would watch her farm workers, her male farm workers, go off to vote. And yet she was stuck at home and she couldn't vote. So she did something about it. She knew that her son was going to be the swing vote in the Tennessee legislature. And she wrote him a letter, basically, listen to your mom, vote the right way. So I was super inspired by that. I love when people are doing something that goes against what society is telling them to do. And that's another message that I try to bring into schools. When someone is telling you that you can't do something, that is exactly when you should do it. I think that's pretty much that's one of the themes of my book. With Hidden Hope, the story of one Holocaust hero. Certainly she was following what she knew was wrong and trying to make it right, and it was going against all of the judgment of everyone around her. She was a teenage French resistance worker, and she used this toy duck to smuggle secret documents from the Nazis, and she risked her life every day. I'm always inspired by people who exhibit in their life resistance and defiance and doing what is important to them at great risk. That's how I find most of my stories. I look for the rebels, I look for the change makers, I look for what moves me, and then I see if there is enough of a narrative arc to to make an interesting book. And I see what's going to inspire kids. I really try to find stories that help them harness that hero within themselves. That is the most important thing to me, that kids come away from these books with an inspiration to do what maybe other people are telling them can't be done. I think that's another theme that I look for too, or that emerges and tugs at me and gives me a yes, is that if this can inspire kids to listen to their inner voice rather than all of the other voices around them, that's really important. So, with the Nancy Pelosi book, I thought that was such an interesting story because she grew up thinking that women were supposed to be behind the scenes. Women's role in politics was help the men get elected. And yet, she grows up to become, at the time, the most powerful woman in American politics. So, that to me is about ignoring all those voices around you that are trying to tell you what to do or what you can't do and doing it anyway. Same thing with the voice that won the vote. So I think politics, it's funny because some people say, oh, this is not about politics, or I don't want to talk about politics. But politics is about what's important to us, right? That's my first line of the voice that won the vote. A vote is a voice. So I think the most important thing to remember, not just with these books, but politics in general, it's about harnessing what is important to you and finding the courage to speak out about it, either with your voice or with your vote or with any action, to speak out about what matters to you. Especially today, there's so much on the internet, there's canceling and there's judgment and there's criticism, and people are scared to say how they feel because it won't be accepted or it will be slammed. And it takes a lot of courage to stand up for what you feel is right, regardless of all the other stuff that is out there. Again, I hope that's what my books do. Encourage people to listen to that inner voice and follow it, no matter what, because you can't go wrong. If they're following their heart, if they're following what is truly important to them, not just stuff that they've heard and they're parroting. But if someone's following what is truly important to them and taking action based on that, that's politics to me. And that's what we can learn from these people who defied social norms and social expectations. And they did what they felt was right at great risk. So if we're all doing that, I think that's what we can ask. That's the best we can do. With these Holocaust books, and I've written two specific Holocaust books, Hidden Hope, which was about Judith Geller, the teenage French resistance fighter, and also Tree of Life, which is about children in the prison camp Terezin, and they planted a tree. So those are specific. But then Tree of Life definitely has a Holocaust theme. Talk about we talk about all the people who were trying so desperately to get FDR to stop the killing, and he didn't. And 6 million people. There's this beautiful spread by Sophia Moore. lit candles on one page and then snuffed out candles on the next page. And it's this amazing depiction of all the people who ended up being murdered, in part because of inaction on FDR's part. Back to your question, one of the one of the comments that I get a lot is, "Aren't you tired of writing Holocaust books?" So I think we need more Holocaust books about heroes and resilience, because I learned about the Holocaust through Anne Frank, right? Diary of Anne Frank, which is an exquisite piece of history, but it's in the context of Jewish people who were here. I learned about my relatives who made it to America, and my relatives who did not, who were left behind. And so I feel like I learned about the Holocaust, and so many of us learned about the Holocaust in the context of people who were. So, again, to an extinct race, and none of us were supposed to be here. My act of defiance is being here to write these stories that the Nazis tried to cover up. So I am not going to stop writing Holocaust books. I have more in the works. I just signed a contract for another one, because the way I see it, our very act of existence is an act of resistance. So we need more of these books about strength, and even in Tree of Life, children planting a tree in the prison camp, Harrison. Most of them didn't survive, but this tree did, and its descendant saplings are all over the world. So there's another symbol of survival. So that's my act of resistance, is writing these Holocaust books that are focused on resilience and the fact that we are still here, which is so important. It's so empowering. My website, ElisaBoxer.com, and I am on Instagram and Facebook. Haven't made the leap to the new social media platforms yet, because I can't have anything that takes away from my writing time at this point. But yeah, I would love to connect with your listeners, your viewers, and thank you for what you do too. You are definitely shining a light on a much needed area of Jewish literature and literature in general, not just Jewish literature. Yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing.